Hi, I'm Frances Katzen, and welcome to my podcast, The World of Real Estate. In this series, we will explore the world's largest asset class and how it plays out on a global scale. I am thrilled to introduce Zachary Kussin, who is a fabulous real estate editor at the New York Post. Zach jump-started his career as a real estate and travel reporter, then spent nearly 5 years reporting general features on local arts and culture for the paper before getting back into the real estate editing. He is incredibly accomplished, award-winning journalist who has travel obsessed, so am I, having flown around the world and back again. I have the pleasure of working with Zach a while ago and his team on some of the high-end projects and deals and that I've been involved in. Zach, thank you so much for being here today. Let's get into it.
Yeah, thank you.
Did I say it right, the last name?
Yeah, you did.
Kussin. For those of you who don't know,
yeah.
It's Kussin. How would you describe yourself, Zach?
That's a great question. So you laid it all out. I mean, it's tough to compete with you after that. I am the real estate editor of the New York Post, and I've worked here for 10 years doing multiple kind of things throughout the company. But like you said, I'm passionate about news and real estate trends, and I'm passionate about meeting people in the industry. I'm passionate about world travel. I'm passionate about shopping for antiques and vintage clothing. I'm a very well-rounded person, I have to say.
So you describe yourself as a well-rounded person?
I am, yeah.
Nice.
I'm also a New York City homeowner, which is cool. But I think what describes me best is I'm someone who's very open-minded, easy to talk to, eager to learn. And that helps me tremendously for this job, and it always has.
How have you kept that going, given the tenure?
It's the spark that I feel like I'm a lifelong student, that I was in school for years, and then I got into journalism, and then I got into real estate journalism. And there's always something more to push me and to keep me motivated, that there are all these aspects of life that I don't know about, that through my job, I'm fortunate to learn about. And once you do, you're curious to get more, and you're curious to meet the people behind it. Like I've met you, and I've known you for many years at this point. And it's just what propels me, that there's always something more to see in this world, which is
well said.
Incredible.
Well said. Where did you grow up?
I grew up upstate, actually. I grew up outside of Utica, New York, in a town called Clinton, which is known as the home of Hamilton College, which is funny because that's the name of Alexander Hamilton. And now I work at the New York Post, which was founded by Alexander Hamilton. And I used to live down this street from where Alexander Hamilton is buried. So I have this bizarre cosmic connection with Alexander Hamilton. But no, I grew up upstate, central New York, close to the Adirondacks, doing, when I was a kid, a lot of swimming, a lot of hiking that I still do as an adult. I'm going back actually in a couple weeks for the eclipse that's happening.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's going right through that area. So I'm excited. So I maintain my roots upstate.
I like it. You don't forget. Where are your parents from? Are they from there? And were they professionals?
My parents are not from there. They moved up there like 5 years before I was born to chase opportunities. So listeners local to New York are going to love that. My mother is from Great Neck. And
really?
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time there. My grandmother lived there for many years, and I had family nearby for a long time. So I spent a lot of my childhood on Long Island. It was just a 4 or 5 hour drive, so we did it regularly. And my father grew up in Queens, a part of Queens very close to the Nassau County line. He's from Queens Village originally, and they moved upstate because my father, who's now retired, was a gastroenterologist, and he wanted to open a clinic. Wow. And my mom went up there with him to help him. And my parents have since divorced. They divorced when I was in elementary school. And my mom stayed up there for a long time. She now lives in North Carolina and she works in nonprofit. And my father is enjoying retirement, inspiring me to travel the world. He just got back from India on this
Wow.
6 week long trip.
Wow.
He goes there at this point almost annually. So
Really? Which
yeah, he loves
ashram?
India.
Wow.
Um, yeah, no, the celebrity one. No, I'm kidding. The fascinating thing is he's taught me the value, and this helped me in my travel writing days, that you can choose to go to a country, you can choose to go to a state here domestically, and you can keep going back, but you can choose a different place each time and just really get into it and really get in, especially in India, where every region is so different. Get into the cuisine, get into the language, get to know the different people. I mean, it's the way he does it is just so focused on the moment and loving life, and it's a huge inspiration for me.
That's beautiful. That is a
Yeah,
gift to bestow. I hope to
yeah,
bestow that with my kids because I love to travel and be in the moment and cuisine myself
yeah,
out all over the place,
all over.
all over. What were your hopes and ambitions growing up?
The truth.
Yeah.
So as I'll tell you the truth. So do you remember when Grey's Anatomy first launched? And that happened during college. I believe it was my freshman year of college, and I was obsessed with Sandra Oh's character. And honestly, just based on that, and just me happening to be in college at the same time, I thought, oh, I could totally be a medical doctor, just like my dad. Like that's excellent. I mean, but his career was a huge inspiration, but it was Sandra Oh on Grey's Anatomy that got me thinking, huh. Yeah, so I was obsessed with the show. I watched it all the time, and I enrolled myself in all these anatomy and biology classes, none of which I did well in. And so I thought, oh, if I'm getting straight C's, then maybe this isn't for me. Um, but I did attend a liberal arts college in the Hudson Valley, which allowed a lot of experimentation in study. And basically, what I did, trying to approach the sciences in a hopeful medical career, which was never in the cards, was kind of the point of that curriculum, that they want to teach you something. If you don't get it, well, hey, at least you tried. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it was during my college years, it was later in college that I realized, huh, I've been focusing on a lot of research, a lot of writing, a lot of historical documentation, and why don't I kind of use that writing and research more professionally, but take it to the next level? Why not try journalism? And I then started seeking out internship opportunities, um, getting more into how I can apply this after college, and most importantly, how I can make money after college. And that's still where I am, and it's still somehow been the absolute best fit. It's a decision I don't regret. It took probably less than 10 minutes for me to, really have that spark and then act on it. And I don't see myself these days in any other industry.
I don't see it either, to be honest. You're really good at what you
I
do.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
What was your first gig in journalism after you decided that you were going to do it?
Well, that's how I think I first met you.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
I worked at the Real Deal. So
Oh, that's right.
yeah, I worked for Amir, and that's still an experience I'm so grateful for, because I after college I did go to grad school. I had to, just because my liberal arts background was good for a critical mindset. It was good for writing skills, but it wasn't the real boots on the leather interview strategy, journalism kind of fundamentals that I use every day at this point. So I went to graduate school. I went to CUNY's Graduate School of
Hmm.
Journalism, and that was a year and a half. And after I finished that in 2011, honestly, I was applying to jobs. I found a job post on Craigslist for the Real Deal.
Remember
I
Craigslist
applied.
in a paper.
Remember Craigslist? Remember Craigslist? Yeah.
It's like the
And
Village
there was
Voice.
I know, and I say it now, and I'm 37, but saying it like that, I'm like, wow, I'm 37. But
Be
yeah,
nice.
there was, I, well, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'll be 38 in a few
Bugger
months,
off.
but no, I say it with love and I say it with respect. But um, I, after that point, I saw this Craigslist post and I applied for it and I thought real estate, okay, why not? And honestly, the framework laid out during my approximate 3 years there were the very building blocks for every single thing that I do, every
Really?
single day to this point. Yeah. So I'm very grateful. I was hired by the web editor at the time, who's still a very dear friend. Her name is Lauren. And Amir was a fantastic guy to work for. Whenever I see him at industry events, I give him a huge hug because, he helped me. And I mean, the real deal helped me become who I am.
It's amazing. It seems like nearly every journalist and every editor has gone through Amir in some form. E.B. Solomon, like
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. I mean, basically all of the mansion section at the Journal is all people who I used to work with at The Real Deal. So, they train you, they teach you this industry and they encourage you to pursue what specifically about the industry you're most passionate about. And I took that to the Post with me and I spun it in my own direction and it's still serving me well.
That's amazing. That says a lot.
Yeah.
Wow. So you've been at the New York Post for a decade, and how has your career evolved from then to now? I mean, obviously you've worked in different areas, but what would you say has evolved the most for you?
That's a good question because for me personally, it's come full circle. It's like you said earlier, I started in 2014. I was hired here to do real estate reporting and at the same time doing some travel reporting as well. So while working on, at that time, news stories about development trends and which neighborhoods throughout the city were seeing the most activity and where people could move, I was also going around the world and writing stories for the
I
travel
feel
section,
so
which was,
bad for you. What a
I
roughhouse
know, it was
job,
it was
man.
horrible. It was the worst. Oh my goodness. It was a hard job. No, it was so rewarding. And it was
What an
that
amazing experience.
it was. And especially at that time, I was 27, 28, and that just opened my eyes to a lot of things. But it was if you wanted to split it, it was 80% doing real estate and 20% doing travel. So it was cool to have kind of both ends of my brain be used at different times. So if real estate news kind of got a little too like, oh, I feel like I've done this story again and again, then you go do a travel story and it's the refresh, then you get back into the thing. So it was helpful to swing between the two.
Were
And
there,
I carried that. Oh,
sorry.
sorry, go ahead.
No, no, please continue.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I carried that through for several years, but it's this is going back to what I said earlier, that I'm endlessly curious and I'm endlessly learning because I feel like life is a learning process, that I started getting introduced to more sections at the Post and I wanted to contribute to their pages as well. So for a while, for several years actually, I backed away from real estate. I was doing that maybe at that point between 2017 and maybe 2021, 2022, doing that like 20% of the time
Wow.
and doing general features on local entertainment, local food festivals, a very specific focus on New York City and what was going on around town, what people could do, kind of servicey um, stories that if people didn't have plans for a weekend, hey, you can go to the Queen's Night Market, for instance, or the Museum of the City of New York is having this really cool exhibit that you should check out. So I was doing a lot of that, which helped put me in touch with a lot of people in the city, building my source network, but also helping me settle into the town that I still call home and I think always will. And that was good until there was an opportunity in 2022 to go back to real estate and take over the section, which I thought, that's my roots. I think I'm going to do this because it
Nice.
was, I mean, you know the thrill of a challenge, you know the thrill of something new. I mean, you do this every day in your professional life,
Yes.
that it's fun. And I thought, I'm seeking growth, I'm seeking new experiences, I'm seeking to learn new things. I'm going to do this. And here I am a year and a half later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Full circle, but in a much more holistic way. So,
Yeah.
The real estate section for the New York Post often covers the real estate transactions for celebrities and high profile executives like Jeff Bezos and Taylor Swift. Can you give us a little scoop? Go on.
Yes, absolutely. So for Jeff Bezos, we've been tracking his purchases in Florida ever since in November when he announced that he was leaving Washington State, going to Florida. And he's been buying a lot of property, very pricey property on Indian Creek Island.
Yep.
And we had a story not long after that that he has his eyes set also on Palm Beach. So I hope that, I hope that there could be new info coming from that. Maybe your listeners could get in touch if they have any scoop because we want to see what he has planned, what he's building, where he's going. That would be helpful. But Taylor Swift is thriving. I mean, this week alone, she went on vacation with her boyfriend. And did you read this? We published a story. They went on vacation to the Bahamas. They stayed at the Rosalita house, $15,000 a night, where they had all the luxe trappings that you can imagine. I mean, their love story. I mean, our readers love that. Our
Of course they
readers
do.
love getting that
Happy
kind of
ending.
evolution of that relationship
Yes.
and how they've gone around the world together lately. So that's great. But the loft near Union Square, where she shot her 1989 album cover, has just had a price improvement. So we're writing about that. I'm actually going to publish that story shortly after this interview, but
Nice.
it's a beautiful, beautiful home with exposed brick and lovely windows and through which you see great views. So we we want to capitalize on the news that is trending, and Jeff Bezos is always a talking point. His relationship is also something that readers love to explore and learn more about. But Taylor Swift, her rise really this last year plus,
The ascension
I
is
wasn't a lot.
unreal.
It's unreal, and it makes me realize that this is the Beatles of my generation today. Just seeing this popularity and seeing this worldwide craze for everything about Taylor Swift. For me, it's fascinating. So it's always interesting to find real estate angles based on these
Celebs
household names, yeah, that people are talking about, people are searching on Google.
all the
And with
time.
that, that's kind of the perfect solution for us to do stories that are going to reach a wide audience.
We've had to get really creative about privacy for our celeb clients because I know
Right.
that you guys have a deep connections at the DOB and and buildings department that somehow leak those names. So it's like a whole thing now. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, but you
Yeah.
guys are
It's
good.
We're good. We're good.
You're
And
really
I
good.
think day one at the Real Deal, Kathy Clark, now at the Wall Street Journal, taught me how to use Acris, which I'm on every single day, several times a day.
Yes.
Yeah, and some celebrities are difficult. I mean, if they're advised by expert brokers such as you, I mean, they can have, and no, and I mean that serious. It's the anonymity can be difficult.
It's
It
really
can be.
difficult. Trusts
Yeah,
tend
yeah,
to be a little better now than the LLC
yeah.
route, which is
Right,
unfortunate but
right.
true. So you've been covering the infamous Weather Underground townhouse in New York City for 12 years. It's a property with a fascinating history. I mean, that blast in itself is like, so can you tell us the latest about what's going on there?
Yeah, so I happen to, and this is the good thing about being a journalist in New York, it's that when you're around town, just in this case, I was on my way to dinner and I was walking down this block to get to the venue. It was an event, it was a press dinner, but I walked by this house because I'd covered it for so many years previously, and I had known that it was on the market, but as I walked by it, the for sale sign had been taken away, and I thought, huh, this home is off the market now. And then I looked into it, it was off the market, and it appears to be the latest challenge in this property's already overarching challenging history,
Huge
which
history.
huge history. So it started, yeah, 12 years ago when I was at the Real Deal, that every Friday, I remember we would do a web story for online publication only. And you probably remember this. It was I'm trying to remember what we called it. It was the broker's chart, I think, and it was a breakdown of the five most expensive home sales to close, I believe, only in Manhattan that week. And it was probably my third or fourth month there that I was in charge of doing this for some time. And there was a closed sale for 18 West 11th Street, right on the Gold Coast between 5th and 6th Avenues. I'm sure I can assume you've represented listings in that
Yes.
stretch, right? I mean, that's
Yes.
a very
It's the Gold
prime
Coast.
part of
It's
this.
that and Ninth
Yeah,
Street and 10th are the three top for sure.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Um, and I saw this address come through, and I thought, this seems familiar. I think I've read about this somewhere, and I looked into it, and it was the
Sure
home
enough.
that, here we go, 54 years ago, just several weeks ago, members of the Weather Underground accidentally detonated.
Detonated.
Yeah, killing three people inside. Um, it was at that point, that block is 19th century townhouses, basically from end to end, with a general shared neo-Gothic architectural design. And that's what this home had when it, at that point, was owned by an advertising executive whose daughter was a member of the Weather Underground. And when he was away on vacation in St. Kitts, she had people come over to assemble bombs that are believed to have been ultimately used at a library at Columbia University. And this is the Weather Underground, the radical leftist group that was opposed to the Vietnam War, and it was the faction of the Students for a Democratic Society. Um, the last that I really looked into this property, which was 4 years ago for the 50th anniversary, when at that point the home had been listed for sale, I believe for around 20 million, maybe
Yeah,
21 million
21. Yep.
dollars. Yeah. Um, I spoke to an author of this definitive book on what happened, and it seems like the handful of young kids had made an error in terms of attaching an electrical fuse or something similar to the bomb, and it accidentally blew up. And three people died inside that day. The facade of the home, again, this
Destroyed.
19th century, yeah, completely blown out, smoke billowing completely out of it. Um, Dustin Hoffman lived next door at the time. Um, on one end, on the other end, there was a man who had just come back from walking his dog, and he had no idea what had happened. And it became a real neighborhood story that people in Greenwich Village still talk about to this day. So I've been covering that over the years just because it's an example of a real estate story. It's an example of a listing story, essentially, because at that point, the rebuilt structure had been on the market for $21 million, but there was something so much deeper to it. And what they were getting for $21 million was a completely modernist structure
I didn't care
that
for it much.
it's interesting. It's
It
interesting. The
is.
story behind that, because this is a landmark district. So
Exactly.
after the explosion, the townhouse itself had to be completely leveled. And I remember this from my research, there were a number of structural beams that for about a decade had to run across the lot in order to support the neighboring homes so that they
Wow.
also wouldn't crumble.
Wow.
And it was a vacant lot for a while. An architect who ultimately um, bestowed that design upon the home had purchased it. And
That's right.
his plans had never come through. And then what happened was there was a wealthy Philadelphia couple who came and bought the lot for, I believe it was $80,000 at that time. So today, that's around 700,000 with inflation. But they bought the lot and they also wanted him to do his design. And that's what it was. It's this angular facade. People should go see this home. It's interesting to
It
see
is.
with everything else around it because it opens at a 45-degree angle. When you're looking at it, it looks like an open book as opposed to a regular flat townhouse facade. And the unusual look just gives the impression that there's something more about this home. And I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg that um, the facade is one thing. I think out rear there's an angular facade as well that goes to a garden. But inside, it was originally built as split levels. So a five-story home originally became 10 stories with these kind of like narrow kind of crawl spaces, it seemed, and everything set at an angle required that couple who owned it at the time to custom build furniture and all these kind of interesting stories
Wow.
behind it. And it's funny how, for me personally, I you can approach a real estate story and see, oh, this is a listing in a really prime part of Manhattan that isn't stranger at all to luxury sales. But there's something about this, the history behind it, and what's standing today as a testament, still 54 years later, of what happened is proof that just in property alone, you get these everlasting tales and these stories that continue to be told, even by people like me. And I wasn't alive at that time, but I'm fascinated by this history.
It
But the
is.
latest, well, no, but the latest answer to your question is that the home is off the market. I believe it seems that it rented several years ago, and I believe for $50,000 a month. I tried getting in touch with the owner, Miguel McKelvey, who co-founded WeWork. I couldn't confirm it. He didn't get back to me. He didn't get back to me for this story either. But the sales effort appears to have its issues, and right now it's off the market, and it's unclear as to what he's doing. And who knows if this home is going to see a next generation of owners. If it does, that's another story for me to pursue.
Oh, for sure. I'm going to
Yeah.
be a betting woman that the person that does buy this is going to tweak that house. Just a guess.
I mean, you should sell that house. You should
Yeah,
you should take the listing and then and then give me the exclusive, and then
I
here we
will.
go. Then I
I will.
continue my yeah. No, it's a fascinating
It is a
tale. It really
fascinating
is.
tale. It was
Yeah.
quite disturbing to read about it. How
Yeah.
do you go about finding leads for your stories, Zach?
Well, that's a great question because right now it's different in my role as an editor because um I manage a number of stories that come in every day. So I'm at my desk, and if I am gonna go that route, Street Easy has always been a gold mine. Acris has always been a gold mine for finding deals. Street Easy I use for listings. If anything pops out in terms of a specific price point or address or just the look of it based on the thumbnail images that you get in the listing preview, that's something that I pursue. But before I was an editor, as a reporter, it was crucial for me to make as many connections as I could in the real estate industry. And it's similar to I remember going to an event that you hosted in 2016 for the Jardine building.
Yes.
Um, yeah, and it was always helpful for me to do that kind of event hopping that you go from one to the other and you never know who you're going to meet. You never know whose card you're going to receive. And I would always email these people the following day and they stayed in touch. And
Smart.
it's good. And
But you're a
like to
good
be a reporter,
networker. You're a good
and
networker.
that's the thing. I mean, thank you. Thank you. That
You have
means
to
a
be
lot
willing to
because
go out there and put yourself out there. And I think for
correct,
most, they just kind of want to go home. It's a long day, but
correct,
you're always
correct.
out there.
You have to be. And it took me years to figure out that if you want to succeed as a reporter, even as an editor in New York or any market that you could be covering, you could be a good writer. You could interview people effectively, but it really is ultimately about who you know and the network that you've built.
Totally agree.
And it's fascinating how simple it is. It sounds simple, but it takes so much legwork. It
It
takes so
does.
many years
It does.
to build that. And now, nearly 15 years into this, I'm still working on it. And that's another thing that's fun as well, that it is a lifelong journey and this lifelong quest of who can I meet, who's interesting, what can I learn from this? And it's fulfilling.
So are there any tips for building genuine relationships in journalism that lead to story leads and exclusives? I mean, is it really just a trust thing? Is it a consistency thing? What would you say are the tips for building this?
I think both. I think you got that right on the head that it's of course trust. You're sharing information. Sometimes people can share information very anonymously or off record, and you need to prove yourself as a
Yeah,
journalist that
it's true.
you are going to handle that information with sensitivity, with respect, that you're not going to burn the bridge of the source who gave it to you. But um, it's also letting people who know who you are personally, because everyone goes into this industry, whether you're covering real estate like we do, or if you're covering politics or crime or whatever it can be, everyone has their own interests in what they want to explore professionally. And I think that kind of helps make their careers more challenging, more fulfilling as a result, because they can fine tune it to their own interests. So for me, I was always interested more in residential. I was always interested more kind of in design or design history or general history, like that Weather Underground townhouse. But at the same time, at the Post, they allow for kind of creativity in approaches. And you can do kind of unusual stories about real estate. If there's a listing that comes to market that seems stuck in another decade, which happens, I see this every day pop up on Street Easy. There, especially in Brooklyn, there are these units that have wood paneling everywhere and Formica counters, and it's very
They're
mid-century and very
amazing.
remarkably preserved. But when you I present myself as this person who is interested in this stuff because you look at me, and of course I am. I have arms full of tattoos. I wear a ton of jewelry at all times. I wear all this vintage clothing. If you show your flair and you show it with pride and you show it to the degree that, no, this is me and this is how I approach the world and this is how I want to interact with it, you can make it professional. Of course, I mean, it shouldn't be too personal, especially when it comes to journalism, but you can have your own flair. And like the fact that I do look like a cool person makes it seem like, oh, he does work on cool stories. And people get to know me like that, which is fun because it's not just a professional relationship that you build, but they get to know you and they get to know your inspirations, which is a lot more well-rounded. And I feel a lot more honest.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. I like that you feel more honest. I think that's part of what lacks in the journalism world. So I think the very fact that you said that, I think, is really important. Do you often receive critical feedback from readers, and how do you handle that?
Well, it's funny you say that. I have throughout the years, it's part of what we do. It's part of what happens that, hey, if we've made a factual error, yeah, let us know. We have to know that. We apologize. We will fix it. Um, but if it's an approach or a certain subject, when I was younger, um, I used to be offended by it, but I would never address it. And it was always Twitter where people tend to be quite angry, and it was just, oh, okay, but now I actually crave that because I feel people are offering feedback because journalism should be up for this kind of criticism. If something is being covered in a way that people see, and I'm using this as an example, of course, if something is being covered as what they perceive as one-sided or unfair or inaccurate, then the journalist deserves to know because as much as we do our stories, we are who we are because of our networks, and every person is our person. And we have to take these seriously. And, it's never anything aggressive, but if people are going to offer feedback, I think they're doing it for a reason. And there is a benefit that you can learn from, and you can take it to your next story. And it's a career that's interesting because you build it yourself, you handle it day to day yourself, but there is public input that allows you to see things differently. And at the same time allows you to see the stories that other people perhaps don't see covered that we should probably be covering. So it expands the horizon. And for me, it is understandable when it can get, for instance, threatening or scary, but if it is brought up in the right way, then it can be a positive experience in which I think positively about it. So I use it, and this is, I think, the thread that's going through it. It is ongoing learning, and I would encourage, if it's delivered within reason and obviously delivered appropriately and not aggressively, then journalists should look into it, and they should probably meet the people who are bringing it up because they probably have another story to tell
Have you
that
done that?
I want to. I mean, it's different now as an editor,
Yeah.
but I mean, I'm 37 going on 38. I'm far more confident in who I am and who I am as a professional as well, that yeah, absolutely. I approach everything with an open mind. And that is nothing I'd be afraid to do. And hey, if you don't learn anything new, you met someone new who could know other people who they could put you in touch with anything down the line. So it's always a glass half full kind of mentality that I have approach it. So I welcome it. I welcome it. But
Wow.
yeah, I mean but that's very journalist to journalist. I'm sure other people have completely different tales. And the fact that I can say this, I feel fortunate.
It's a skill to have that being that
Yeah.
open. Um, what are the latest projects you're working on? What's in the pipeline for you now?
Right now, we're working on really building up the digital section of the Post's real estate section. And when
Wow.
I took over a year and a half ago, that was really the goal. And I wanted to really bolster daily coverage, get multiple stories up. But at the same time, it's the challenge of not having items get too monotonous, listing story after listing story, another celebrity. Readers get sick of that. So how do we mix it up? And we have started getting into um, politically oriented real estate stories. One of my reporters comes from this exact background, and she wants this to be her passion in terms of how she reports on it in the real estate beat. And we did a story just earlier on a uh, a right-wing commentator on Twitter who has been very vocal about the Trump civil case, and people in the media talking about it on air. Jon Stewart had come out with an episode of The Daily Show on Monday night talking about the quote unquote overvaluing and quote unquote how it's not victimless. A guy on Twitter found that Jon Stewart had allegedly overvalued the price of his own Tribeca penthouse. So we dug into that, and we're doing these stories to really get as many angles as we can in real estate. And it's a fascinating thing that it's flexible and it can be applied anywhere. But with that what we just did, I'm also balancing it today with a story on Karl Lagerfeld's home in Paris that just sold at auction,
Wow.
which is its own fascinating thing, and that's
Totally.
a home. And it's good to have that variety. People should learn. People should take something from our stories. Um, and with this, whoever the new owner is of Karl Lagerfeld's, I mean, it's the listing images are empty. Of course, he passed away some time ago, but whoever's getting it has windows that look out to the Seine, and directly across the river on the other bank, there's the Louvre Museum
Oh,
right there. So
please.
that's
It's
the
like,
fun kind of property, kind of
do we know the price?
goals.
What was the price?
10 million euros.
That's cheap.
Um, that's pretty cheap
It's like
for that kind of
15
prime.
US or 16 US.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a good price
It's a
for a
great
piece of
price.
history. So
Wow.
we're doing that. So it's a fun balance, and that's these shorter newsy items are what we have on the docket, and we do multiple of them a day, and we have a lot of fun doing them. And I encourage people to come read them because what we're doing is making this fun, making it a great experience for online, learning something from the text, of course, but seeing these images that will make your jaw drop. It's the full kind of
The full
um,
Monty.
the full body reading experience that you want to get. You want emotions, you want education, you want all that. You want shock, surprise
Yep.
element, and a tabloid atmosphere makes that a lot of fun because it allows for that kind of creative view into what other outlets, could cover differently. So
Everybody reads your rag. New York Post is always read, always read.
thank you.
Everybody's
We
reading
appreciate
it. Um,
Yeah, everybody's reading it.
everybody's reading it. Some people don't like to admit it, no offense, but they hide it, but most read
They
it.
should admit it.
And
They should
I
admit
agree. But yeah,
it.
be proud, loud and
Yeah.
proud. What would you say is the biggest achievement or win in your career thus far?
I I'm proud to say that during my time at the Post, I've won awards for my work. Um, I've won several at this point, but I received my first award. Um, this is going to get a little personal. I'm sorry. In
No, it's okay.
2018,
Yeah.
um, about 6 months after I lost my home in a fire, and it
Oh,
was for a story that I had worked so hard on the year previous. It was an association of the Associated Press that was handing out these awards for stories done the previous year. So
wow.
the awards came out in 2018, but the stories had been published in 2017. But early 2018, 2 years after buying an apartment, I lost it in a fire. It was an accidental fire. But basically, everyone in my building lost everything.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
that was,
Awful.
thank you. But it's been a long time. I've changed because of it. I've grown because of it. But there was the overarching aspect at that point because it happened the second week of that year. It was right
Wow.
after the new year
Wow.
that it created a focus on 2018 of loss and of destruction. And you go through a grief when that happens. I mean, very luckily, no one was killed in the fire, even though I found out when I got home from work that night that the building had exploded. I saw empty body bags on the street, and
Oh
that's why I
my
knew something had
God.
gone completely awry. But no one had passed away. There were very minor injuries. That's wonderful news. But there was the loss of property. And for me, there was also the loss of independence
Yeah.
that took me a very, very long time to process and really became every single thing that I thought about that year. But I won an
Wow.
award for a story, that I had really worked hard on the previous year. And it was a real estate story, actually. And of a year that was really cursed by these emotions of, oh, I lost this, that was something valuable to me. There was something that I won and there was something that I gained. And because of it, there was a way for me to grow and to move forward. And I think, I mean, what happened, I wish hadn't have happened, of course, but the timing of that award in that year, going through what I was going through, kind of allowed me to not move on, but start to move on. And that was something I'll always look back on as a very fundamental aspect of my own personal, and in this case, kind of professional development.
Wow. I didn't know that. I'm sorry. Sounds
Oh,
like
no,
you
I
got
mean,
there, but it sounds like it was hell. Hell.
it was a long time ago, and I've been back in my apartment for about 5 years at this point. And you know the upside?
What?
I mean, I lost all my furnishings, I lost all my books, I lost so much. But when I moved back into my apartment, I made it more me. I chose furnishings that like what I wear. I wear vintage clothing, all this antique jewelry. I wanted to go towards kind of secondhand furniture with the story and, painted in colors that I wear that look good on me. So of course it's going to look good in my home. Basically, by moving in, I was allowed to get this fresh start essentially for free
Nice.
and make it my own in a way that it wasn't before. So it's not everybody gets that chance, but
True.
it's the one upside
Yep.
that, and I got a bigger dishwasher as a result.
Hey, it's
So
all about the dishes.
it's all about that.
It's all
So
about it.
yeah. Yeah, but no, I mean that was a fun story and it was a magazine kind of style article for which I won that award. So
What was
it's
it
nice
about?
that it was about a home that was called the Illuminaire House, and it was built, I want to say sometime in the middle of the 20th century, and it was put on display at MoMA. Oh, I believe it was built in the 30s, actually. It was put on display at MoMA. It was displayed at the World's Fair, and it was supposed to be this example for proto-affordable housing, how people can use cheap American-made materials to build a home that you can live in. And in this case, it was aluminum panels.
Uh,
And it was done
yeah.
stylistically in a way that it looked architecturally relevant and mid-century and amazing. And it got all this attention. And it was purchased several decades later by a private investor on Long Island who constructed it in his yard and he had it there, but it fell into disrepair and it seemed to be the subject of neglect. And a local university on Long Island, their architecture program had bought it from him. They disassembled it. They made it part of their curriculum to reassemble it, which is fascinating.
Wow.
But then that school shut down,
Oh,
and again, this home for its second time was left to rot. It was vandalized with graffiti. It was damaged in other ways. And the city of Palm Springs in California, mid-century hotbed. I've done all those architectural tours in Palm Springs, and they're a ton of fun. They bought it and disassembled it once more and shipped it on a truck bed, all these pieces across the country so that they could
unbelievable.
rebuild it. So once again, it
Unbelievable.
has another chance of life. So, and that's another thing, you work in a fascinating industry,
I know.
because you get in touch with these homes that have all these backstories and not just family connections, but with this, it was this downtrodden home that had all this promise and all this history that many decades later is seeing its time again.
I love that. What is your favorite part about your job today and your least favorite?
Everything is my favorite part, honestly. I have no
Oh,
least
you're
favorite
so
part.
politically
I love
correct.
No, no. I mean, I've
You
been
really love
here
it.
for so long.
Yeah.
No, no, I've been here for so long and I'm getting back into real estate because I've been here at the Post for so long because it is home. It is.
I
And
love that.
I I got back into real estate because that's my foundation that my experience at the Real Deal gave me. So these things do, like I said earlier, they come full circle.
Yep.
And now I'm able to, like people taught me at the Real Deal, or like people taught me at the Post in my early days. Now, as the role of a manager, I can help my writers, my reporters understand the fun aspects of the New York City market. And at the same time, they teach me about what they're more experienced in covering, which is kind of more national news, which I had always been very local in my focus. But um, it's always this fun exchange of ideas, and every single day there's something new. And there's another home, there's another story. Yesterday, for instance, there was a Frank Lloyd Wright, a difficult name to say, one of the most famous architects in
Yes.
American history. Another home that he designed popped up on the market in the Midwest, one of his earliest commissions. And
Wow.
um, we get to do a little bit of everything. And if my writers are passionate about doing it, then they should do it because people allowed me that chance, especially at the Post. And I want to give that gift to them.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What is your morning routine?
It's funny. I wish I could be like one of those, like subjects of those magazine profiles. Like, what do you do on Monday mornings? Well, I start with green juice and then I go to yoga and then I have to go to Pilates after because you have to balance it out. When I wake up, I immediately wash the retinol off my face. I put on sunscreen. Um, and then at that point, if I'm not doing laundry or any kind of very boring chores, because I have a very ordinary existence. Um, my hunt for the stories, especially on weekdays, that's when it starts. That's
Yeah.
when, now with this digital pace, we have to get stories online every single day, several times a day. We need to have an early morning meeting in which we're going through story pitches, going through other considerations,
What time does
compiling
that
the list.
happen?
It depends. It could start at 8, 8:30, 9. I mean, I start my hunt probably around 7:15 or 7:30.
Got it.
And yeah, I mean, we go through we aggregate content from other news outlets. So see what they came out with. We can share their stories, which we're very happy to do. Um, See what else we find in our own records, just to get the plan moving for the day ahead. And it helps to have that mapped out for me, just mentally, just to have one thing, then move to another thing, then go to that.
Yeah.
I like structure, I like plans, and that just helps me kind of accomplish one thing, accomplish another thing. And then
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if you accomplish everything, which I always do, um, you know, it, it it makes you feel good. It makes you feel like you had a great day. And that's basically all I can ask for. So that's how I start my morning. And then when we finish that plan for the day, I inhale breakfast. Trader Joe's has brand new flavors of the overnight oats, which I cannot recommend enough. There's peanut butter, there's raspberry, no,
Nice.
strawberry, apple. Yeah, I inhale that. This morning I made instant coffee because I was in a rush and it was good. It was Trader Joe's instant coffee. And I got on the train and I came to the office. So
You're
that is
amazing.
my routine. So, that's maybe one day. I mean, I'll wake up earlier and probably, if I'm working on a book, write that book or go to the gym earlier. I go to the gym a lot, but not at this time. But um, it's very sit down, get in the work mindset and get the
Crank.
productive wheels. Yeah. I mean, I can assume you're a very seasoned professional. I mean, like you can understand the need for, really mapping this out in the morning and just getting your day set and feeling good about it.
Yeah, I do. I love what I do. I'm
Yeah.
very grateful actually for what
Yeah.
I do. I'm
Yeah.
very very lucky to do what I do. And I think it changes and it evolves. It's no longer about getting, it's actually about giving. I know that sounds really woozha woozha, but I went there. When you're not working, what are some of the things that you do to unwind?
Well, you and we both share that passion for
Passion for
travel.
travel. Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, I travel
And
as
I'm a
much as I
foodie too.
possibly can.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, I'm a foodie as well. No, food is probably my biggest passion in life to the degree that it was such a passion several years ago that I had to lose 50 pounds.
What?
Um, oh yeah. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a brand
Oh,
new person. I've kept it off. So
wow.
it was the COVID weight
Yeah, I think
that everyone
everybody
had.
went through that. My gosh. I mean, come
Everyone,
on.
everyone. And there was also so much more time that you could explore different cookbooks and you could buy a Dutch oven or a cast iron skillet and try all these recipes and then have no
Yep.
one to share them with. So
Oh,
you
of
would eat them
course.
alone
I'll just
like
have
I
another
did.
bite.
It 100%. And yeah, no, I gained a lot of weight from that, but I lost it. Um, but no, food is a huge passion. But no, travel. I grew up traveling with my family. I recently got back from Hong Kong and Taiwan.
Wow.
That was fascinating. Taiwan especially is a very, very special place that everyone should go see.
Dying to do it.
Really, you can find very cheap tickets on EVA Airways. It's probably if you time it right, it could be about $1,000. And once you're on the ground, it's the currency is favorable. And it's the absolute best food you will ever eat.
I believe it.
The juiciest dumplings, the crispiest fried ribs, the best sweets, the pineapple cake, all of it, and the friendliest people as well. It was
Wow.
so, I mean, I will go back this year, but
Okay, I'm going to hit
um,
you up for details because I
you
actually want
have
to
to.
check
I
it
have
out. Okay.
every recommendation. And if you watch Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix, his new season has a Taipei episode.
Does it really?
And I watched it and he did all the right things. And
Okay.
that's the preview. Do it and then, go and you don't even have to thank me. Just get everything out of the experience because it's a wonderful, wonderful place. And the landscape is beautiful. It's mountainous. It's full of these trees that are similar to the trees that grow in Australia. It's it's nothing you would expect, and each end of the island is so different from the other. But the common thread is that no matter what you eat, it's going to be inexpensive and it's going to be the absolute best thing you've ever eaten. Um, but other than that, I am so addicted to vintage shopping. I go
So, what are your favorites? What are your favorite pieces that you've pulled?
well, I collect a lot of vintage Harley Davidson t-shirts and I get a lot of Native American or like Mexican or Indian silver that I wear a lot. I am looking forward to the next chapter of the vintage show in Manhattan. Um, I believe it's called the Manhattan Vintage Show. It's generally now it's every 3 months, and it's on 18th Street.
Yes.
I believe at the Metropolitan Pavilion or the one
Yes.
next door, whose name I don't know. But it's the best assemblage of all these vintage clothing dealers who you get to know personally. They get to know you personally. They know what to source. The prices are very accessible, and you get to go shopping, and it's fun. I do that. That's how I buy clothes in the city.
That's actually
But
really cool.
it's fun. It's fun. And I bring my father, who's also very into style, very into jewelry, he wears a lot of flashy footwear and suits and watches. So he
Amazing.
likes going to see this too. But for general antiques, and this is how I refurnished my apartment when I moved back in, there are wonderful antique sales upstate. The top recommendation, I also do this in my spare time. I go nearer my hometown to an antique sale that's called Madison Bouckville, and it's in central New York, and it's a week-long kind of fun garage sale. You find everything. You find vintage medical equipment, you find vintage Persian rugs, you find mid-century modern sinks and coffee tables and
Amazing.
art, and it's a fun way to just spend a week in what I believe is the most beautiful pocket of upstate New York. It's
Wow.
rolling hills, farmscape. The weather is never too humid in the summer. It's just perfectly hot. And you meet some friendly people and you can pick up some fun pieces for your home as well. And so I spend my free time by spending money. And you know,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah, no, there's no judgment. I get it. I
yeah,
love to shop. Okay, so the final question, Zach.
yeah.
What is your vice?
I used to smoke cigarettes, but I quit that
Your
during
biggest
COVID.
vice, I should say.
My biggest vice, honestly, I should probably trim down on the coffee intake. I love coffee. I got very passionate about coffee during COVID, and I used to drink just regular Keurig pods with, cheap creamer, but allowing myself, the chance when I had the time during coronavirus to get into different blends, get into different brewing techniques. But it developed a real addiction, and I drink a lot of coffee, like 4 cups a day. It's
Wow.
probably not the best for my sleep, but that has to be it because I have trimmed down on social media just by choice. Sometimes social media is good for story sourcing, which I can use it for that. But the one thing that if I am in a bad mood and people notice that I'm in a bad mood, it's probably because I need coffee. So once I get it, I immediately perk up. And I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
if that's my biggest vice, I mean, I'm telling you truthfully that it is, I feel like I'm a pretty okay
I think we're
person.
good. We're good on that one.
Yeah, yeah.
It is so nice to reconnect with you after all
It's
this
the
time.
best. It's
And
the absolute best.
I'm so enjoying. I have loved hearing how much you've come into your own and see you hit the ground running and then some. What a positive vibe I get from you. And the fact that the Post has put you in this amazing position is a testament to the New York Post and recognizing what really is the essence of the New York Post. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with me today.
I'm very honored by that. Thank you.
It's mutual.